Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. Good evening and a warm welcome to all the participants and our esteemed guests for the 12th day of My Bharat lecture series as part of Disha Bharat's My Bharat online youth campaign to celebrate our 75th Independence Day. Today's guest speaker is Dr. K. Radhakrishnan, who is an eminent space scientist and former chairman of ISRO. He would be speaking on the topic Space and Technology, Bharat's Proud Achievements. Myself, Dr. Varun M. Deshpande, I am an active volunteer of Disha Bharat since 7 years. Disha Bharat's journey in the last 16 years has seen some major milestones. Every few years, Disha Bharat has taken upon itself to reach far and wide, spreading the message of value education. In this effort, some special programs were organized, each time with a new theme. State conference in 2014 was organized, and owing to the success of this state conference, in the following year, that is in 2015, a national conference in association with Maharani Lakshmi Ammani College for Women was organized. Theme was Value Initiatives, Key to Youth Empowerment. Delegates from across India, including vice chancellors, management representatives, principals, and senior faculty participated and presented their papers on the given theme. Next, in the year 2019, Principals Conclave was with the topic Value Education, Challenges and the Way Forward was organized in association with Bangalore University. Key takeaway from all these conferences were that unequivocal support for value education should become an integral part of mainstream education. This dream of Disha Bharat was realized when our government of India rolled out the National Education Policy in 2020 after a long gap of 34 years. In this regard, Disha Bharat, through a series of national webinars called Vikasana NEP Vision to Action, is spreading the message of NEP 2020. This is an ongoing series and we are already in the 10th month this August. Now, I would request Srimati Manvita Maskode ji to kindly introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. Radhakrishnan, to all of our participants. Srimati Manvita Maskode ji is a practicing psychologist, international coach, trainer, education curriculum developer. She is also an active volunteer with Disha Bharat. Over to Manvita Madam to welcome our honorable guest, Dr. K. Radhakrishnan. Thank you.
Thank you, Varunji. Namaste to everyone. Namaste to everyone attending today's. What a day to call upon our guest for today to represent the space milestone that India has been making. It is a privilege to welcome Dr. K. Radhakrishnan, sir, to the Disha platform. Thank you very much, sir, for accepting our request to be addressing our audience on this very important session, which marks the 75th year of India's independence. Thank you. A little about sir. There's so much, but it's very hard to condense, sir, in just about 2 minutes, but an effort has been made to comprehensively introduce Dr. Radhakrishnan, sir. Dr. K. Radhakrishnan is a technocrat par excellence, a dynamic and result-oriented manager with very fine personal and interpersonal qualities, an astute institution builder with a strategic vision, an able and diligent administrator with a positive attitude, and an inspiring leader with a rather rare skill of nurturing leadership in the younger generation and for the younger generation. Dr. Radhakrishnan, sir, has headed the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, between November 2009 and December 2014 as Chairman of Space Commission, Secretary of the Department of Space and Chairman of ISRO. Prior to this, sir was the Director of Vikram Sarabhai Space Center between 2007 and 2009. And also the Director of National Remote Sensing Agency between 2005 and 2008 of the Department of Space. Dr. Radhakrishnan sir is known for his great contributions in major space programs, including the very cherished and the most memorable Chandrayaan and the Mangalayaan. Presently, sir is the chairperson of the Board of Governors of IIT Kanpur and chairman of the Standing Committee of the IIT Council, besides being an honorary distinguished advisor in the Department of Space, ISRO. In 2014, Dr. Radhakrishnan sir received the prestigious Padma Bhushan Award for contribution to science and engineering. What a great achievement. We are so privileged to hear from you, sir. And apart from being a space scientist, Radhakrishnan sir is also a Carnatic musician and a Kathakali enthusiast and performer, and has performed at various prestigious platforms across the country. Sir, it is indeed a privilege to have you over this evening. Thank you very much. And I welcome you on behalf of Disha Bharat and all our audience who have joined us this evening. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Manida. Thank you, Varun, for the nice introduction. It has always been a privilege to be participating in the programs of Disha Bharat. There is a value which you value. And as we read in Bhagavad Gita, you require a Yogeshwara along with a Dhanurdhara for completeness. And that's what you are trying to promote. And you have been quite successful in that. And I hope in future also, this would be a great movement for this nation, Bharat. For today's presentation, I have a few slides made. I would request you to share that from the host site. While you do so, let me start by saying August 12th is an important day for India's space fraternity. August 12th is the birthday of the father of Indian space program, a legendary scientist who founded the cradle of space science in 1947 at the Physical Research Laboratories at Ahmedabad, and which became a cradle for the Indian space program, which began in the year 1962. Now, space is the last frontier of humankind. Space technology enables us to learn more about humanity. We call it space exploration. It also helps us to serve the humanity better. And in the entire process, the science and technology capability of the nation goes up, and science and technology are engines of growth and development and sustainable development. So it is an overarching discipline that we are going to deal with today. Let me have the first slide. Next one. In 1957, the modern space age began. Soviets, followed by Americans, were able to put a satellite into Earth's orbit. That was the power of rocket science at that point of time. And imagine that was a bipolar world. These two countries were at the two poles, competing with each other. Space was a medium for competition. A few more nations joined. Many nations in Europe, Canada, China, Japan, all got into the field of space. differing aspirations and visions. India too joined at that time, but India's vision was different from the rest of the players in the field of space at that time. Here we were looking at space as a medium for helping the development of this country, helping the humanity, helping the society. And what you see here is that humble beginning that we had from a fishing hamlet near Thiruvananthapuram, a place called Tumba, where a small sounding rocket took off in the year 1963. And the rest is history. And if you look at the world in the 1960s and 70s, these were several major milestones in technology. Moon was a target. Taking humans into space, landing in moon, looking at Mars, sending an orbiter towards Mars. These were all the priorities of the major nations at that time. Having the capability to launch the spacecraft, having the capability to put the human being in space or land in moon, this all required technological prowess. And India had a program with a national vision, which we call an indomitable vision, that we should be able to use this technology to help solve the problems of man and society. And that makes Indian space program different, and we evolved over these decades along with the rest of the world. And the most important point here is India is reckoned as one among the 6 space agencies in the world. We have America, we have the current Russia, the European Space Agency, which is a consortium of several nations of Europe, Japan, China, and comes India, then Canada and other countries come. What I want to just show you in the next few slides is in terms of space technology, in terms of space applications, what are the major achievements that we had over these decades. Can I have the next slide, please? This is what we achieved in terms of space technology capability. And the most important part of Indian space program was we had a focus on application, and we also imbibed that philosophy in the organization that we should be self-reliant in our capability to build the satellites, our capability to launch these satellites from India, and gave the initial programs of ISRO in space sciences using small sounding rockets. And we started developing the satellite launch vehicle, which can put an object into the orbit around Earth. But it is a long lead program. So what we did at that time was to use a communication satellite and demonstrate to the country that this is a means of communicating to the rural areas of this country, of using a new medium for education, for broadcasting. We also got satellite data and tried to understand how we can use it to know more about our agricultural lands, forest, water resources, etc. It was a demonstration. Also, we started building our satellite technology, and the first satellite, Aryabhatta, went into orbit in 1975 on a foreign rocket on a collaborative basis. In this process, we also started building up a national system in this country to make use of the satellite systems, the capability required, the awareness required in all the agencies in the center and at the states. And this we call, and which is a USP of India, building national systems using a communication satellite series and the remote sensing satellite series, and bringing all these people involved, all stakeholders into the decision-making process to understand their requirements and make satellites to that requirement, and then build a capacity for them to make use of it and make it as part of the value chain. It's a long process. And we had the INSAT systems. Initially, they were built in US, but we started building those INSAT-2 satellites in India. And 1992, we had our first INSAT-2 flying. And we also had the Indian remote sensing satellite series, which went into the orbit by 1988. But importantly, the IRS-1C satellite with a spatial resolution of 5.8 meter was the best commercial civilian remote sensing satellite of the world. And that is the time several ground stations all over the world started receiving data from our IRS-1C on commercial basis. This was a very major milestone for us. And the SLV-3 had the successful launch in 1980. We started increasing our launch capabilities in technology as well as the payload that it can carry. Came the ASLV, but by 1994, we had our Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, PSLV. It is a household name today. It has lofted several of India's remote sensing satellites and the Chandrayaan-1 and the Mangalyaan. And later I will show you how it has been used by the international community. We also wanted to develop the capability for launching communication satellites, and that orbit is 36,000 kilometers. You need more power for that. And then came the GSLV with the cryogenic technology. Initially, we were using the Russian cryogenic engine and stage. And by 2014, we developed the capability for the cryogenic engine and stage and flew our GSLV using that. This was another major milestone. And further, we enhanced it by 2017 using our GSLV Mark III. Now, what does it mean actually? GSLV Mark III has a capability to put a communication satellite of 3.524 ton into a geostationary transfer orbit. That means most of our communication satellites could be launched from India, except for a few heavy communication satellites where we need to still go for procured launch. The rest are launched from Sriharikota. 1995, the IRS-1C was there, but we enhanced our capability many folds. And today we have the Cartosat series of satellites with the spatial resolution of 1 meter when we started in 2005. And currently it is about 0.28 meter. That means 1 foot. That means an object of that size, 1 foot by 1 foot, will have a specific discernible signature collected by the satellite, which is at around 500 plus kilometer orbit. And if you have several such satellites, we can watch several of our fields in the process. Agriculture is a major requirement for us. Forestry is a major requirement. Water resource a major requirement. So we started the ResourceSat series with multiple sensors, giving an aggregate view, giving a medium view, and also very fine view, so that we can find out what is happening in the agricultural fields. And what is that we are looking for? We will come to it later. So we had also satellites for looking at the meteorology, how to help us understand our weather better, of the cyclone better, and give improved forecasts. So this was another major area. So in this process, we developed a capability to use communication satellites, Earth observation satellites for a variety of national applications. And by 2000, India developed the capability to think of lunar planetary exploration. And by 2003, the Chandrayaan-1 project was approved by the government after a process of discussion at national level, looking at the capabilities of the country, looking at what is happening elsewhere in the world. And by 2008, we had the Chandrayaan-1 in orbit. Importantly, first time we were moving from the Earth's orbit to an orbit of a celestial body. It also provided opportunity for international cooperation where scientific instruments of several other countries, major space agencies, were flown free. And two of those instruments led to major discoveries around Moon. Of course, the next step was Mars, Mangalyaan, which we executed from concept to fruition in 4 years at a small budget. And we achieved success in the first attempt. Of course, in that process, we learned from all those failures others had on the Mars orbiter mission, which was quite high at that time. And our own experience, all were put together. And in year 2014, we had an orbiter around Mars. There are other requirements of satellite navigation. And we all know about the GPS system. GPS has become synonymous with satellite navigation. There is a Russian system, GLONASS. There is a European system, Galileo. There is a Chinese system also. India decided that we must have an assured signal. And we started this Navik constellation of 7 satellites, a very unique concept for regional navigation, which is in the orbit. Space science has been driving us from the beginning. And from the small experiments that we were flying on the sounding rockets. Sounding rockets goes like a projectile. At around 40, 50, 60 kilometers, the payload will be open and measurements will be done about the ionosphere, stratosphere, etc. But some of those satellites, like ISRO has flown in ASLV, or some of the IRS flown on PSLV, had a few scientific instruments. They were targets of opportunity for the space scientists. But AstroSat became the first satellite put around Earth as a multi-wavelength observatory for astronomers. And this has made a lot of impact in the international astronomy community, which is still giving a lot of data. What was happening in this process is we were enhancing our capabilities in remote sensing, from optical remote sensing to microwave remote sensing. Optical remote sensing has one constraint that it cannot penetrate through the cloud. What is below in the cloud cannot be observed by the optical satellite systems. So when there is clouds, and you have to look at the water resources or flooding or agricultural field covered by the flood, it becomes difficult or impossible. So we went to the microwave remote sensing, where the energy is sent by the satellite and the return signal is analyzed. And by the turn of this millennium, we had the first satellite which had the capability to look at our agricultural fields penetrating through the cloud. Communication satellite technology has been advancing very fast. The direct to home, which we are all now used to, came in the process by 2000 plus. And today we talk about HTS satellites. We talk about satellite internet. So we are advancing in technology in communication. We are improving our capability in remote sensing. We have a navigation system for assured navigation signal. We have made inroads into satellite astronomy. We are into lunar observation. We are into Mars observation. What was missing from the rest of the world in terms of space portfolios was human spaceflight, putting human being into the space and later using human for exploration of the space. And the Gaganyaan program that was announced a few years ago is a very major step that India took towards human spaceflight. But in the bottom line of all this, beyond the ISRO community, there is a large space fraternity, the space industry. Nearly 150 firms like HAL and Larsen and Toubro on one side, to the small, medium, micro, in private sector, public sector participating in this program to realize the satellites and the launch vehicles that we talk about. Today, we have a constellation of 50 satellites operating in the orbit for communication, remote sensing, and navigation. And the Chandrayaan-2 and the Mars orbiter. How do we make use of this? This is told in the next slide. Can I go to the next slide? India is a role model in space applications and services for the whole world. We made our beginning as an advocate of using space for applications. We got the users in the loop for decision making and implementation. We enhanced the capacity in all these organizations. We institutionalized space application centers have now come up in several of the central ministries and all state governments. And there is a continuous effort to develop this capability in those organizations. We call it externalization. Now, what have we done actually? In a nutshell, the communication infrastructure of this country has been developed. It's a tectonic shift, if you see, from what we had in the early 80s to what we have today. The ability for data connectivity all around that came through the satellite system, especially for the rural areas. The broadcasting system that we see earlier, we had in 4 metros, black and white television in the 80s, but today what we see is totally different. Education is another area where from the beginning we have been making inroads. Monitoring of our natural resources, agriculture, forestry, water resources, and all. Meteorological observations, and using the systems to discern the environment and climate. That's a new priority. Strategic services, again, using the spacecraft system became a priority, and all around the world it is a priority, and we are there. As I said, the assured navigation signals through Navig. And if you put the remote sensing system, communication system, and the navigation system all put together, we get location-based services, geospatial services, ability to use them for developmental planning at grassroots level, and most important thing is disaster management support. Last 15 to 20 years, the space system has been working in tandem with the disaster management support system of this country. There is a 24/7 decision support center at Hyderabad, which works along with the Home Ministry. Today, if a cyclonic system is evolving in the Bay of Bengal or the Arabian Sea, the satellites will be able to pick up that at least 48 hours in advance. Can also make a lot of observations that the modeling community requires in the India Meteorology Department. And every year we go through a few cyclones at least where this service is provided in the best possible way to the people who are there on the ground for the relief operations. It's an end-to-end system today, what is in practice. In the 1970s, we were hearing 10,000 plus deaths in cyclones, but today hardly a few. And that is the power of the technology, from satellites to the modeling to finally reaching into the people who are on the ground. So this is what world is looking at on India's capabilities. Can I have the next one? In space cooperation and space commerce, India has a very prominent place in the world. UN Committee on Peaceful Use of Outer Space has been the first organization that was set up by UN in 1960. And India is one of those founding members of that system, UN Corpus it is called. And in the early 90s, came up a regional center for the Asia Pacific region. This is at Ahmedabad and Dehradun, which takes trainees from the Asia Pacific countries and gave them training in space science, applications, and technology of postgraduate level programs and doctorate programs, etc. And so far, we have trained about 2,000 such scientists from 35 nations. And this is a major contribution that we have done to this region. Launching of foreign satellites using our PSLV started in the year 1999. It continues. And so far, we have launched 342 satellites for 34 nations, and these are commercial services. We have built 2 communication satellites along with a strategic partner for a commercial user. And that shows how our technology is benchmarked internationally in communications. As I said earlier, in remote sensing, a lot of data has been used by several nations. For launch of other satellites, we give ground station support from our Bangalore facilities and the ground stations which are hooked up to that. These are all technology services which India is able to export. Arrangements for space cooperation exist with 59 nations. They are not simply instruments which are signed. We have done joint space missions. The Megatropic satellite mission along with the French Space Agency, a Saral mission to look at ocean altimetry, and the latest joint mission with NASA for a NASA ISRO radar satellite, NISAR. These are typical examples of how nations come together and build things, leveraging on each one's capability. And we have key presence in global space governance bodies. As I mentioned, UN Corpus, we continue to be a member. We are the advocates of space application, and we also chair many of their major committees. International Astronautical Federation, who is who in space, a national agency or an industry, are all there. The International Academy of Astronautics, the Committee on Space Research, COSPAR, this is a very high-level scientific forum. The Committee on Earth Observation Systems. In all these places, India is not only a member, we have been sitting there as chair many times. The Unispace 1, 2, 3 that was held by the UN Corpus, specifically looking at the space applications for development, had India playing pivotal roles. So India has made really an impact in the international field, whether it is cooperation, collaboration, or commerce. Can I have the next slide, please? Last year, in June 2020, the government of India made a very major, far-reaching structural reform in the space sector. This opened new avenues, a systematic way of the private sector becoming travelers with the national space program. And what are those specific opportunities available now today? Starting from the bottom. Build, develop, launch, and operate satellites. Manufacturing partnership for heavy launchers and satellites like PSLV, GSLV, or the INSATs and IRS or GSATs. They all require very major production flow now, which could be done by this space industry. Make or develop satellites, ground equipment and terminals, and build and operate those facilities. Today, globally, we talk about a space economy which is close to 400 billion US dollars. And if you look at the constituents of this space economy, about 70% of it is provided by the ground equipment and the downstream services provided by the systems. The satellites and the launch, they constitute a smaller element of it. So there is a lot of scope for industry, the startups, to get into this area of space activity. And if we have to be leader in space, not just remain our fifth or sixth in the world, we need to innovate flyable systems, new instruments, new technologies, which requires for these flight in the space segments and on the ground for utilizing that. So these are all fertile areas for the space startups. There is a lot of soft activity, consultancy and soft services, project management, commercialization, practice of space law. These are all avenues which the space will throw on. So what we see in this space technology is it encompasses all domains of science, technology, and humanities. And it is this collective or the synergy of all these disciplines that make space, science, and technology applications stand up. And rightly, if you look at the last 10 to 15 years, the space economy has been growing, even while the national economies had several ups and downs. Next slide, please. Yeah. Today we talk about a new world. It's called New Space Age. From the modern space age of 1957, where a few nations were the major players. In the current world of New Space Age, a few individuals or space protagonists are the heroes. We talk about SpaceX, Elon Musk. We talk about Jeff Bezos and several such major industrialists who have ventured into the frontier areas of space. A new sector of space startups. From 15 or 20 nations who had interest in space in the 1960s, today we have 70 national space agencies, and many of them at the cutting edge of space. Now, if you look at the future, what are those avenues? In all these 5 areas, there are a lot of prospects for this country. Space exploration, whether it is solar system or the universe, of understanding whether life is there elsewhere or what is the origin of life here. Looking at the space environment and the human habitat and exploration, all these areas are exciting and exciting. Exploitation is another new area which is coming up. One is solar power, which we were doing in the past with the systems on the ground. Now we talk about solar power satellites or large platforms. Celestial resources mining. Recently, there was a mission where the objective was to bring material from the asteroids. Downstream processing of the celestial resources and habitat in space for a longer time. Today, people dream about staying in Mars. Bottom, engagement. Sustainable Development Goals SDG 2030 is globally accepted, and there are 17 goals and at least 12 of them require space. If you look at climate, it's another global concern where Around 50 parameters of land, ocean, atmosphere have to be measured systematically for analysis. And at least half of them require space systems. How to get intelligent products out of the space data for use. And today we have globally at least 30 to 40 years of satellite data collected available. It's a gold mine. Space for security. This is another dimension which has come up in the few decades. And the security of space as such. Today, there are about 4,000 plus operating satellites in the orbit. Large satellites of 6 to 7 tons to small satellites. And the small satellite constellations of thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit for communication, for broadband, these are all coming up now. So security of space assets from the space debris created by us, by the old satellites, or through some of the intentional human acts, or from the cosmic debris. These are all important things to understand and act upon. When we talk about thousands of satellites and launch and the operation, there is a big enterprise coming, building, launching, deploying, and operating the satellite constellation and space-based services. Now, all these require the first two and the last two require engineering, advances in technology, capabilities in rockets. Today, the world is looking at rockets that can put 130 tons into a low Earth orbit. The Falcon Heavy 3 that was used by Elon Musk last year can put about 65 tons into low Earth orbit. Now, this is the number that we are talking about. Similarly, spacecraft instruments, as technology advances, we can have more and more miniaturization and versatility. Human and cargo return flights from Mars or Moon at a later date, or even asteroids. Now, these are all the challenges for this. Now, this requires the youth to look at several subjects like astronomy, astrophysics, astrobiology, bioastronautics, etc., etc. This is a real challenge for the new generation. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. We started talking about the National Education Policy 2020. This is a major tool today in the hands of the younger generation for shaping India's future. Look at the objective that has been put: to transform India into a vibrant knowledge society and global knowledge. And look at the kind of skills that the education policy is trying to bring in. Conceptual understanding, critical thinking, mathematical and computational thinking, experiential learning. These are all stressed at the moment. Paradigm changes in the higher level of education, multidisciplinary education and research universities, looking at synergy, a platform where the teachers could be trained, how the research ecosystem all around the country could be enhanced at the education level, at the school level, at the college level, and a rationalized institutional architecture, governance, etc., etc. Now, this is what is happening. And this is a very major step. Like we talked about the space sector reforms of 2020, the NEP 2020 is going to empower the youth for the future Bharat. Next. As I said in the beginning, you need, along with a Dhanurdhara, a Yogeshwara. And here comes the importance of what Swami Vivekananda told. I am enamored by a few statements. Mind you, this is life's experience. If you really want the good of others, the whole universe may stand against you and still cannot hurt you. It must crumble before the power of the Lord himself in you if you are sincere and really unselfish. Give me few men and women who are pure and selfless, and I shall shake the world. When you are born as a man, leave some indelible mark behind you. He who is a servant of all is their true master. He never becomes a leader in whose love there is a consideration of high and low. He whose love knows no end and never stops to consider high or low has the whole world lying at his feet. And they alone live who live for others. And what is the message? Next one. Next slide. This is what I learned. Knowing, doing, and being are three essential elements of any individual. And while knowing, learn how to learn. Be a student every day. This knowledge has to be translated into action, which requires organizing and realizing with the resources. More than that, what you are, your character, your conscience, your integrity, honesty, all this matter. That makes you different from the rest. And live with selfless service and leave a legacy behind. Wish you all the best. Time permits, we will have a few questions. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Varun.
Thank you so much, sir, for delivering such an engaging and enriching speech on the topic of Bharat's proud contributions on space and technology. The journey of Bharat's Space and Technology program, which you illustrated to us from the humble beginnings of 1962 to this current day, has been nothing short of inspiring, especially because our unique selling proposition is to use these advancements in space and technology for the betterment of humanity at grassroots level in areas such as education, metallurgy, climate predictions, oceanography, geolocation, etc. It is truly heartening to see our indigenous space technology is providing commercial services for several other countries with respect to space launches, training space technologists, as well as participating in multinational space technology cooperation programs. I am sure that all our participants thoroughly enjoyed today's session and have gained knowledge, and they feel prouder that about Bharat's contribution and accomplishments in the field of space and technology. Sir, with your kind permission, I would like to ask some questions which we have got from the audience. I would seek your permission to
go please go ahead. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. The first question is, as you have explained, India has progressed greatly in space research since independence. I would like you to, elaborate a little bit more. According to you, what are the major challenges in the space research area? Maybe you want to share some thoughts additionally to whatever you have shared already.
Yeah, as I mentioned there, one is the technological capability. Mm-hmm. It requires cutting edge technology, whether it is electronic devices, materials, or manufacturing technology, and also conceiving unique instruments for space research. Mm-hmm. And this is an area where one has to be free from the dependence on foreign sources. Yes, we can make use of them, but we need to have the capability developed in the country. Yep. The second one, strength recognizes strength. Mm-hmm. If we have the capability, then we will have partners to do things together. So when we look at larger issues in space, which requires a lot of resources, whether it is habitat on Moon or Mars or any other major program, today it requires synergy of several nations. And in that process, what is that we are going to contribute? So there has to be something on which we can leverage on. So we need to develop this capability. Mm-hmm. And finally, this requires the best brains to work in this area. And one thing I can tell, this is an area where you will feel excited. It is challenging. And at the end of the day, you will feel happy to be part of that.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. That was very helpful. So, second question, you spoke about the national education policy. So, I have a question on that. Uh, are you happy with the current quality of primary and secondary education in India, and the level to which it provides and nourishes the enthusiasm required for, say, space research? And what is your opinion in promoting interest on space research among school students? Any pointers on that which we can take it forward?
See, the new generations always have the advantage of the integrated knowledge of the past. And logical thinking, critical thinking, these are all their assets. So we should be able to have an education system where this can be nurtured, rather than inhibiting the students from asking questions because the teacher does not know the answer. We should be able to make them think, ask questions. So you should be a facilitator.
Yeah.
This is number one. This requires development of the skills and capabilities of the teachers. And continuous learning is essential for the teacher. And critical thinking is essential for the students. Absolutely. And if you look at today's students, they are excellent experts in the new areas. So we should be able to promote that.
Perfect, sir. Thank you so much. So the next question is, on a personal note, would you please share your most joyful as well as most challenging moment when you were chairman of ISRO?
Yeah. First and foremost, I would say the most joyous moment as the ISRO person was when the India's cryogenic engine and stage started working in the GSLV in January 2014, 5th January 2014.
Yeah.
When we said cryo stage ignited and it continued to go. This was a great moment of my life. The second was when the GSLV Mark III had the first experimental flights, and we saw two sounding rockets, two solid rockets, S-200 started firing together. And they were working in synchronism. That was another great moment. But the best moment was when Mars orbiter became a success. Absolutely. On that day, September 24, 2014. These are all good part of it. Yeah. But these moments come after a lot of difficult periods. This morning we had a flight.
Yeah.
What happened today happened for me in 2010, 15th of April, when we were doing the first flight test of India's cryogenic engine and stage. Exactly similar situation. First stage worked well, second stage worked well, as compared to all the previous GSLV flights. The cryo stage ignited. We were very happy. But the ignition did not sustain more than a minute. That was number one. It was almost 18 years of work of a large community of ISRO.
Yeah.
The same year, we had another flight of the GSLV with the Russian cryogenic engine. There a silly problem in the top of the vehicle created a problem for the lower stage itself. In the first 50 seconds, the vehicle had to be destroyed from ground. That was another moment. But the rest of the 3 years of activity of the entire organization going through this difficult process created that legacy. This was a great moment of learning. So we learned from failures. That is why we said in rocket science, which is very complex, you must have the steel nerves. And today is again another indication of that. Yes. And I'm sure the entire community of ISRO will come out understanding what exactly happened. And these things happen in space.
Definitely. Yes, I'm pretty confident that our team at ISRO will bounce back and will have a successful launch very soon. Right, sir. So thanks for sharing your joyful as well as challenging moments. So you also quoted Swami Vivekananda on your slide. So coincidentally, we have a question on that. So Swami Vivekananda has said, where science ends, spirituality begins. Okay, as an ancient nation and a land of spiritual practices, how do you connect science with culture and spirituality?
That's why I quoted Bhagavad Gita in the beginning, what
Absolutely.
Sanjaya said. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna Yatra Bharto Dhanudhara.
Yes.
You require both actually. Your mind has to be with you.
Yeah.
Even when you have a very difficult situation, whether it is in Olympics or whether in rocket launch or in a surgery that a doctor performs, you require your mind with you. And how that mind gets into your control. And that is what the India's knowledge system has provided to us. So I believe in that.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I have a question on, you touched upon a topic of security in space. So I have a question on that. So please feel free to, review this question and answer it based on your thing. So India has major security threats in space, sky, and sea. So this is a known threats that we have. And in event of beginning of a space warfare, how secured are we, and how should we face such challenges? Do you have any thoughts on this?
I will not go into the specifics of this question, but generally I should say space has been a medium for this purpose. And right from 1960s to 1985, in the bipolar world, they had the capability to look at each other, to fight with each other. But there were several instruments of governance, multilateral and bilateral, which created a sanctuary regime at that time. 1985, the announcement of the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, or what we popularly call space war, came into the picture. Then onwards, space has been there as another medium. So there are several countries who are using today space for this purpose, for surveillance and for supremacy. So I would stop at this level.
Okay, sure. So thank you for answering that question. Last question is, I would like you to, as a parting message, if you want to share any message for the students and the youth of the country. You have already shared about it. If you want to add anything more on that particular.
And that's the last message which I thought I should say, that one has to be selfless. If the fathers of Indian space program, if the first generation leaders who created the entire space activity in the country were only worried about improving their biodata, we would not have had this space program in this country. So it is selfless service which we have seen. It is the leadership that they provided, a leading from the front, taking responsibility for the failures, leaving the credit to others. These are all things which we learn. These are not read in books. How you face a failure when you are in that hot seat. Finally, it is selfless service. And finally, when you leave this world, will you be known through a couple of words? What is that legacy you are going to leave for the very fact that you have lived in this world? So one should think of what I am contributing to the society around me, to the humanity for which you will be known for. Why we talk about Vivekananda? Because he was different. Why we talk about Mahatma Gandhi? Different. Why we talk about Nelson Mandela? They are different. It is called servantine leaders, actually. Leaders who work for others. That's what Vivekananda told. You don't try to become master. You be the servant of people. That's what.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much for providing us this excellent lecture, as well as being patiently answering all the questions that we had. So thank you once again for being with us today and sharing this platform with us.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed this interaction.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like our admin to show the slide on the upcoming events for tomorrow's session, so that we can share it with our participants. And okay, so this is what we have lined up for you for tomorrow. So as a practice, we are having a session from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. The students, interaction, and there will be a special program tomorrow where we are going to have an interaction with students with Dr. Ashish Kumar Ballal, who is former Indian hockey captain, an Olympian, an Arjuna awardee, and also a Asian Games gold medalist. So along with that, we are having certain other programs also with respect to soulful rendition of patriotic songs, an inspiring story about Lal Bahadur Shastri, poetry, mono acting, dancing as a tribute to Bharat Mata, and a speech on Azad Hind Fauj. All right. So this is for the morning program, and in the evening, would you like to share the evening program, please? Evening, one of the things that I am also curiously waiting for. It's a talk from Dr. Shatavdani R. Ganesh, a renowned scholar and author from Bangalore, who will be speaking about national resurgence and Indic thoughts. So a lot of things to watch out for tomorrow, and great to have you all in this session. So I will thank you, everyone who has attended the session, and our guest. So looking forward to the special program which is going to come on August 14th, which is post our regular session, which is a drama with respect to Bhagat Singh. It's going to be a very special event. So please make sure that you attend this particular session, and this is going to be at 7:30 p.m. So it's apart from our regular lecture series. So this is going to be on 14th, which is on the eve of the 75th Independence Day celebration. So definitely I would advise all of us to make sure we attend this particular program. Right. So once again, thank you all for attending this session live and making this a grand success. Thank you, and Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.